Have you ever stopped to think what it takes to make the difference? I mean, what it really takes to make the difference in our lives, in our careers, our businesses, our industries, even in our communities. Is there a common denominator that can transform good into great, acceptable into the exceptional, or even the mediocre into elite? Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Difference. I'm Lendon Wilson. I am your host. I am joined here today with Stephen Pine, my co-host, and he has brought on a friend and special guest, Chris Coker, with CrossFit Wiley. So I've known Steve for quite a while. You've probably seen him on some other shows. We're all still in the shelter-in-place mode, and it gives us a good outlet to at least kind of connect and keep our friendships and relationships going. Steve, I'm going to let you start first. I want you to tell everybody who you are, a little bit about where you work and what you do, and then I want you to introduce your friend Chris to the audience.
Will do. Hey, it's good to see you again virtually. Look forward to getting to see both of you again at some point face to face. But yeah, just to give a little bit about myself and our firm, Stephen Pine with Patterson and Associates Insurance. I'm a partner there. Been there for 17 years. Full service insurance firm, from commercial to personal and benefits as well. And our mission is basically it's pretty simple. It's to make an impact in someone's life every day. Impact is our core values. Each letter stands for something of significance to us, and that is our goal. It's just to make an impact in the lives of other people, whether it be risk management wise in insurance, or whether it just be on a personal level, like a radio show, promoting other small businesses in the area to help our community grow. So that's just a little bit about me, but more importantly, Chris Coker, our special guest today, and I'll actually let him give you a little bit more of an intro to himself, but I have known Chris now for about 7 years. Met Chris at CrossFit Wiley back in the early stages of developing the gym there, and Chris and I hit it off from day one. We're a lot alike, mentality-wise, focus-wise, drive-wise, both two driven individuals, which is why I like Chris. But I'll let him give you a little bit more background about himself and who he is. Okay.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be on. So like Stephen said, we've known each other for about 7 years. I'm the owner of CrossFit Wiley, and we're actually coming up on our 8th year anniversary this Thursday of opening the gym. So Stephen joined late in that first year, and he's kind of seen the whole thing from start to finish. So at CrossFit Wiley, it's a CrossFit gym by name, obviously, and so that comes with a lot of preconceived notions. But really, what our passion is and our goal is at CrossFit Wiley is just to provide opportunity. We try to provide opportunity for people that desire to make a change in their lifestyle, desire to improve themselves in and outside of the gym. And so a lot can be learned from somebody's work ethic and how they conduct themselves in the gym, and a lot can be improved outside the gym by building that discipline inside the gym. So we pride ourselves in providing that opportunity for people to grow and kind of develop and as much on the inside as on the outside.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit more about CrossFit Wiley. What brought you, Chris, to starting a CrossFit franchise? Were you in fitness before?
Yeah, I was. I played golf in college and did some mini tour stuff. So I've been in athletics and worked out a lot all through that, and trying to take care of myself and from a player standpoint. And then later on, after I was out of school for a while, I kind of found Olympic weightlifting and CrossFit and some different disciplines there, and got to the point where I kind of become the subject matter expert in my little area, and was helping some people at another gym that a friend of mine owned. And then it just, kind of snowballed. I think all businesses start for two reasons. People either see opportunity or they see a need. And I saw kind of a need. CrossFit was growing, and there was a lot of people get into it. Didn't see a ton of professionalism from a coaching standpoint yet, and thought there was a real need and a desire for people to take advantage of that opportunity. And so, and like I kind of alluded to, I just in helping the people around the gym that I was at, kind of for free at the time, I really fell in love with setting people up to succeed and setting people up to kind of find themselves inside and outside of the gym. And so when an opportunity opened up for me to open my own, it was a no-brainer for me.
That sounds good. Tell me this, and I've always wondered, because I'll be honest, I've not been to a CrossFit. At one point in time in my life, I was involved in fitness quite a bit myself. What's unique about CrossFit as compared to other fitness centers? Tell me what you would think makes it is really the difference between CrossFit workouts and what you may find, say, at another one of the large corporate fitness centers.
The biggest difference really isn't the workouts. People think CrossFit and they automatically think about the workouts and the intensity, but the real difference has nothing to do with the workouts themselves. The real difference is the group dynamic. And Stephen can attest to this. You quickly, once you become a member or even just go to a couple classes, you quickly start to learn people's names. You're quickly seeing familiar faces. You're making friends. And that dynamic of knowing that you're gonna show up and see people that you know, and people that know you, and a more welcoming environment and supportive environment, having that group dynamic is really what sets it apart. And you're starting to see that even outside of the CrossFit model in other group type fitness boutique gyms. You're starting to see those really blossom and really take off in your Orange Theories and other things like that. And so the big box gyms really are up against a wall right now, facing these small boutique gyms. And I think CrossFit was really the start of that trend.
The way you describe that, it kind of reminds me of in team sports, being on a team and having that accountability. Do you think that itself is really what helps people find a lot of success in coming to CrossFit or places like that? Because, you a lot of times when you don't want to go to the gym, your buddy does, and you end up going anyway and having one of the best workouts you've ever had. It always seemed that way in my life, is that the times I didn't want to go, I usually ended up having one of the best workouts I'd ever had. What do you think about the accountability aspect of it? Is that something you think is important?
Yeah, it's everything. Obviously there are some people that are self-disciplined enough and like to work out alone, like to go to a normal gym and kind of do their thing with their headphones in and head down. But most people don't fit that mold. And even if you are one of those people, eventually that can kind of, your desires and your passion for it can wane. So having that accountability and that group dynamic, people texting you when you don't show up, people texting you a couple hours before class to drag you in there. And then, like you said, once you actually get in there and knock it out and get it done, typically you have a complete 360 mind shift as far as what you were thinking going into it. And even doing the Zoom classes recently, I've noticed that myself. We did a workout the other day. I just had zero desire to do it. I wasn't in the right frame of mind, didn't want to do it. And since I was leading the session, I had to get on there and get after it and get everybody motivated. But by the time we got halfway through it, I was fired up and I was in such a better mood by the time we got finished. And if it weren't for the group dynamic, even on a Zoom call, I probably would have not done it at all that day. And then, that would have just snowballed. And so even for us doing it as long as we have and being kind of the leaders of the group, we still play off of that group dynamic and that accountability. Awesome.
Steve, share a little bit of what you've experienced working out there and being a part of that group. I know that I see a lot of your videos, known you for a long time. I know you're a workout fanatic. So tell us a little bit about what you enjoy about it, what it's done for you, and share some of the dynamics you think that make the difference with CrossFit Wiley.
Well, a lot of it will be just a reiteration, honestly, of what Chris just said. But the real difference with CrossFit Wiley is the people. And I truly believe that starts at the top. Just like any business, I think what makes the difference in that business has to start at the leadership level. Chris truly is that person, and his wife, Laura, also. They're both heavily involved with the business, and it trickles down and you can see it the minute you walk in. But the people in general, I've always been, Chris was talking about the type of person that can put their head down and just work out and do it by themselves. And I've always been that person, starting in high school even. But in college, people would call me crazy because if they couldn't find me, they knew where I would be. I'd always be in the gym. And it's just what I did. It's what I love doing. I love the pain. I love the challenge every day. I don't know. I just thrive off of it. But my mindset is changing as I get older. I turned 40 last year. And so that does change a little bit, although I still thrive off of that. And I was telling Chris the other day, and I did take a little time off from CrossFit Wiley. I moved out to Heath, and the commute wasn't very good, and it was very difficult to get over there. But I was telling him the other day how much I did miss the people, how much I miss the atmosphere. And really, it's the end of the workouts that I miss. It's not I'm a very competitive person. And so I'll push myself beyond limits that I probably should. My body's probably paying for that a little bit. But it's the aspect of the people around you when you have to run that last 800 meters or that last 400 meters, whatever it is, or do that last farmer's carry that you just don't want to do. The people that have already finished or just walking alongside you, cheering you on to make sure that you finish, to make sure that you give it your best every day. That's the part of it that I miss. But that's also the aspect that we bring into our business, even though it's not fitness, it's insurance. But when you have that rough day, when you make 100 phone calls and you have 100 hangups in your face, it's those other folks around you that say, hey, you got to come back tomorrow. You got to be here at 7 o'clock. You got to start all over. Yesterday didn't happen. Tomorrow is going to happen. So you start over. You learn from what happened today, and you build on it tomorrow, and you get better every single day. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. There's good snatching days. There's good clean and jerk days. And then there's just awful days where it doesn't feel right. The timing's not right. Your mobility's not right. You just have those days. And it carries over to any business. But if you don't surround yourself with people that are going to motivate you, encourage you, support you, and tell you, hey, it's okay to have those bad days as long as you come back tomorrow, then it really is tough to go back. And CrossFit Wiley, that community does provide that.
How important is it to be in an environment where people depend on you to be at your best? I mean, how motivating is that?
I think it's everything.
I mean, kind of what Chris was saying today. He didn't want to do the Zoom call, but you've got those people that are depending on you daily, and that can be pretty tough sometimes. It really can, because I mean, you really don't have an off switch, right? You've got to perform, and as you said, Steve, not every day are you going to do your best, but I think people around you need to see that you're working to do your best. Would you agree?
I do, for sure. Absolutely. And I'll let Chris speak to that maybe a little bit more than I do, but I think it's extremely important. I think it's even more difficult in the fitness industry, though, to be honest with you, to bring your best every day. That's tough. When you're just a member, sometimes you can show up and get away with it. But when you're the leader of the pack, you got to show up every day. You got to motivate yourself every single day. But again, if that community is around you, where they're helping to motivate everybody, it can make it a little bit easier, I suppose.
Well, Chris, touch on that a little bit, because I owned a gym, many years ago. Owned a couple of them. And it was, I'm not going to call it a big box, but it was run off of that model, right? That's kind of what everybody did back then. We had personal training and things like that. But it wasn't incumbent on me to be ready to work out with everybody every day. So you could be an owner, you could, if you had a bad day, you could hide in your office, whatever it may be. What's it like to be not only the owner of the business, but the person that's leading the crowd every day, and to have to bring your A game every day, pretty much?
I mean, I love that aspect of it. I think if you don't like being in that position, then owning this type of business, this type of gym is probably not for you. And owning any business, really, if you don't have that mindset, that's one thing I love about it. Even on days, if I have all the classes covered by other coaches and I don't have to necessarily lead a class, it's still important for us as the owners to get in there and work out with the group and make those personal connections and kind of lead by example. And even if we're not feeling 100% that day, maybe, do an easier version of the workout or whatever can. And that's leading by example as well, because not every day people need to go in there and kill themselves. Sometimes you have to teach them that it's okay to go the other way, and maybe just take it kind of easy for a few days and rest and recover. But do it with a goal in mind, and do it for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
So we love that part of it for sure.
Before we go to our next segment here, Steve was talking to me a little bit this morning about you are training or have trained an Olympian. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about that. That's exciting.
Yeah, so there's a local girl here from Wiley. Her name's Jordan Dela Cruz, and had the Olympics not been postponed, she had qualified. And this would have been her first one. And so they're rescheduling for 2021, and just talked to her the other day, and they're trying to figure out what all that is going to entail and whether or not they're going to have to qualify again. But yeah, she started with us when she had just turned 14, and I trained her myself. My wife and I trained her ourselves for, I guess about 3 years. And during all of that, I had worked with some other coaches from around the country, all the top level Olympic weightlifting coaches around the country. We kind of work together a lot with different athletes, and we travel a lot together and do all those things. So me and another coach had built a team essentially with, I think at one point we had 3 of the top 6 girls in the country on that one team. And now since then he's actually added the number 1, I guess, junior, you could call him, under 20 lifter to the team as well. And so we just built a really stout team. And so we actually, at one point, and a couple of them were both training in Wiley at our gym. Since then, we decided it was better to put the whole team together. And so they all went down to a facility in Atlanta, and they're all training there now. And they're just crushing it. And so we have another guy by the name of Spencer Arnold that's kind of leading that team now. And I try to stay in touch with them and help in any way I can. And anytime the girls come back to town, we always get together and train. But it's exciting to see her progress from such a young age, and basically just learn with a broomstick to now she's off to the Olympics and lifting more weight than we are. So
very cool. All right, so let's move. Let's switch gears a little bit now. I want to ask you guys some questions, and just kind of I want to try to get into your mindset and what's going on with you guys as far as where you find your success, where you find your motivation, what inspires you. So here's my first question to you. If you could have the opportunity to learn from 3 of the highest level professionals that you have heard of or know, who would it be and why? And Steve, I'm going to start with you on that.
There's a lot. There are a lot. It's hard to narrow it down to 3. I think first, and maybe we can just kind of go one and one here, kind of go back and forth. But I think first and foremost, I mean, most know that I'm a huge Alabama guy, and most would probably say that I would want to pick the brain of Nick Saban, which I would. However, probably above and before him, I would put Gene Stallings on that list. Gene Stallings was a head coach at Alabama and won a national championship there in 1992. To beat Miami in the Sugar Bowl. And Gene Stallings is one of those guys where I actually kind of knew Gene Stallings. My parents knew him a lot more than I did, or a lot better than I did. But we went to church together in Tuscaloosa when we lived there. Gene and his wife, Ruth Ann, both went to University Church of Christ. But I choose him because I know of his faith, and I know where his hope is, and I know what he always put number 1 in his life, which was God, and then second was his family, and then third after that would have been his career. But the reason I would put him there, and this is the reason I would put all 3 of them there. Well, maybe except for one, which we get there, you'll know why. But how he keeps those priorities in line constantly. And when those priorities started to shift, I would want to know where his mindset went to put them back in line.
That's great.
Yeah. But that's number one would be Gene Stallings for sure.
Okay. Chris, what about you?
I had a really hard time with this, so I kind of trended just to more recent influences that I've had, people that I've been following more recently. So I don't know if this would be like my all-time top three, but it's my current three right now. Uh, First, and not in any particular order, I have Mark Cuban up there because I've been reading a lot of stuff from him that he's put out over the years, and just from a pure business standpoint. Also from a family standpoint, though, he doesn't. Most people don't know a lot about his family, but he's been able to accomplish a lot and be in the forefront of a lot of different moving pieces and a lot of different things going on, and build that family. And I've read some stuff recently about how he's managed to find that balance, and it's intriguing to me. And actually, all three of the people on my list kind of fall into that similar category.
Okay. All right, Steve, let's go back to you. Who would be your second?
So number two, this might be a little bit of a curveball for most people, but number two, I would put N.T. Wright on that list. N.T. Wright is he's an author, very well-known Christian author. He's the chair of the chair of the New Testament and Early Christianity, I believe is what it is, at the University of St. Andrews. I believe that's correct. Sorry, I had to think about that. But N.T. Wright's an author, focuses on Christianity. And, the thing that I respect about him is in all of his books and in all of his interviews, all of his lectures, which you can find plenty of them on YouTube, he holds true to who he is. You can imagine being a Christian, being an outspoken Christian in today's society. You can probably imagine how much adversity that he faces. You can probably imagine the amount of scrutiny that he receives just being who he is. But he holds true to who he is. He holds true to his values. He holds true to his beliefs, and he does it in a respectful manner. But he is extremely intelligent in the way that he shares his faith and how it's developed is just extremely intriguing to me. And I'd encourage you to read some of his books if you haven't. They can be tough reads because the guy is extremely smart. And so you may have to reread some things a few times.
I couldn't keep up.
No, I can't keep up either. You got to reread a few times. But
and then kind of study together or something, maybe.
Yeah, no, exactly. They make good study books. But N.T. Wright would be on that list just because of how strong he is in his faith and his willingness to stand up for what he believes in.
Okay. All right. So far, so good. I'm liking this. Chris, let's go back to you. Who's your second?
So my second is, in kind of for similar reasons, but from a different background, is Jocko Willink. He's become pretty famous over the last couple of years. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he led the SEAL Training Command at one point. So he was the trainer of Navy SEALs, if you will. So his experiences and his thoughts on leadership and discipline and just everything that encompasses. I mean, those are two huge words that you can throw out for somebody to be and I'll call him an expert in those two fields. And so just his background in those two areas are really intriguing to me. I love listening to him talk. I love everything he's written. He's a great follow, and to have a chance to sit down with him and really dive into some of those details, that would be a treat.
Yeah, that is the leadership and the discipline part, I think, and we'll get back to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but we're starting to kind of see a theme of all these people. Steve, let's go with number three. Who do you got?
So three was really tough, and I was trying to decide between two individuals, complete polar opposites. I was trying to decide between Warren Buffett and Tiger Woods, and I actually went with Tiger. I studied a lot about Warren Buffett. I've been investing since I was 16 years old, so I feel like I have a pretty good handle on Warren Buffett. But Tiger would be one of those where, and this is where I was making the joke about the family earlier, but
Yeah.
but Tiger, from a focus standpoint and determination, and what that man was able to do in his career is mind-boggling to me. And I have met Jack, by the way. Just throw that out there for you, Chris. I had dinner with him a couple times. But Tiger, and I have met Tiger before too. He's a man of few words. Unless to be able to actually, yeah, yeah. But to be able to get into his brain and see where it goes when it's game time for that guy. Once he steps onto the course or onto the driving range, and I would love to be able to analyze his brain and just the determination and the focus that man has is unlike anything I've ever seen or witnessed before. And I'm sure I'm missing some folks, but the zone that guy can go into under pressure is just mind-boggling to me. And it's I don't know. I have aspirations of being able to do that. But at the same time, you see people like that and how it affects other parts of their life too, right?
Right.
But the guy was extremely committed to his art and refused to lose. And to me, it's amazing, and it's just mind-boggling to be able to go there.
I agree. I had a conversation with someone one day. We were talking about Tiger and Michael Jordan and which one we thought was the most focused. And I honestly would have to. I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. I mean, that was back in my early 20s when he was just amazing. Not to take away from anyone before him or anyone after, but Michael Jordan just had a way to impose his will. But they were asking me what I thought about who was the most focused, and I really would believe that it would be Tiger Woods, because I think, for me, I'm not good at basketball or golf. I love them both, but I suck at both of them equally. But I would just think that being focused in golf, given the type of sport that it is, would be a little bit tougher because you got so much time to think about what just happened bad versus what I have to do next, right?
Yeah.
In a basketball game, you get into the flow of it. And, of course, Steve, you played basketball, so you would know much better than me. But I think that Tiger's focus, I'm just not sure that there's anybody athletically that's ever had one as deep as he had when he was on fire.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would actually argue that Tiger had better focus both in the short term on the micro level, like shot after shot after shot, and throughout his career on the big picture than Michael had. I think Tiger kind of trumps him on both, because you look at some of the things that Michael did, he kind of got satisfied. He tried different things. He did baseball and he kind of bounced around. And you can tell he was always like looking for more motivation, more something new, where Tiger's biggest accomplishment doesn't have anything to do with any of the wins or shots that he hit. It's the fact that he was able to maintain his focus on his primary objective of becoming the best player ever for such a long period of time, regardless of the amount of success he had already had.
Agreed.
And for him to do that year after year after year with $1 billion in the bank and really nothing on the line, I mean, that's the most mind-blowing thing to me about Tiger Woods.
I think Tiger really only cared about his own approval, if that makes sense. I don't think it was the crowds or the fans or anything like that. I think he had his goals, and he was so focused on that, on what he wanted to accomplish. And kind of like what you were saying, Chris, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about, all the accolades or anything that he was getting. It was just like he had this level that he wanted to get to. And he just, as Steve said, he was not going to be denied. And unfortunately, injuries can have a way to. I'm still hoping he makes a comeback. I'd love to see it. And I think if anybody can do it, it's him. Final one for you, Chris, and then I want to just talk a little bit about some things about all of them. But Chris, who's your last one?
My last was not as serious as Steve's, but it's there's a I don't know if you would call him a marketing and guru, an investment guru, he's kind of shown to be somewhat of a savant in both fields, and that's Gary Vaynerchuk. Anybody in any kind of business right now knows that guy's name. He's pretty hot right now. But from a different angle, I mentioned people balancing family and work, and especially with big goals and trying to do big things. That's honestly been my biggest struggle for the last few years. My wife and I have a 3.5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we are pulling our hairs out, both being self-employed and running our own businesses and trying to deal with these kids at the same time has been a challenge. I never would have thought it was this hard. So to see people, and he's got young kids, he's constantly on the go. He's constantly putting out content. He's constantly doing something. But I know, and he's talked about it, that on the weekends and after certain hours at night, he shuts it off. Mm-hmm. I mean, for a guy that probably spends more time on social media than anybody on the planet right now, he doesn't touch a phone all weekend. And so he does his best to find that balance. And that's an intriguing aspect to me.
So just listen to you guys talk about the 6 people. I wrote down some notes: mentally tough, family, faith, leadership, discipline, focus, determination. And then with Gary V, I think that we would kind of look at that like his planning, his time management. I think, as far as to get to that family component that he's looking for. What would you guys say? Now, you heard me say that, so whatever, if that's part of what you would say, but if you put all 6 of those people in a room, what do you think would be a common denominator of every one of them? Because even, with Steve, with you having such a distinct difference between your 3, there's still going to be a common denominator. And what would you think that would be if you could pick just one word? What would it be?
Process.
Yes. I love it.
Process.
Right. And just sticking to that process, right?
Yeah.
I think when you talk about Gene Stallings, when you mentioned it, I thought that was really good. You would like to know if he got off track a little bit, how he got back on. Process always helps us come back. That's our compass. Everybody knows of Tiger's process and how hard he worked. Chris, what about you? What would you think would be the common denominator of all?
I kind of have 2 different ways of looking at this, and you even provided kind of a list just to give us ideas on things to think about. And while I was looking at that list, I couldn't pick anything on that list that those people don't have in common. I tried to break it down a little bit more, and I started to think the one word I could kind of come up with was drive, because I think a person's drive is what creates those other traits. I think their drive and their tenacity to succeed at whatever it is they're doing, it puts them in a position where they have to manage their time, to where they have to be consistent, to where they have to set goals and have core values, and that drives all those other things. So without that, none of that other stuff's even gonna scratch the surface.
So let me ask this before, because I'm glad you said that, because it's a question I like asking everybody, because I love learning different people's mindsets and thoughts and things like that. And so drive is not something that I put on there, but I agree with you 100%. But can you get drive, Chris, without self-awareness and changing your mindset? Do you think that would come before drive, or does drive come before that? The chicken and the egg question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say they're kind of mutually exclusive. I don't think you can have any of those things without the other, to be honest. I think those kind of all fall into that same little pocket in somebody's mind that puts them in a position to want to succeed in the first place.
Okay. So would you say then that it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle? They all have to come together at the right time to make the perfect picture, and that's really why I think you'll find that those type of people that y'all are talking about, why they're so successful, is because they're able to get the pieces of the puzzle of their life in the right spot at the right time, and everything else flows from there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that's a perfect way of saying it. It's kind of like putting the puzzle pieces together, and what's interesting to me is where those pieces come from. So we talked a lot about Tiger, and if you've done any research or read any books about him and his upbringing, that was a very fragile puzzle. The way that process took place at a young age, that could have easily fallen apart. And I saw it growing up in junior golf and high school golf and college golf. I mean, there were guys that were all Americans in high school that you never heard of again. Those guys are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
Guys that were all Americans in college that didn't make it on tour, dime a dozen. And a lot of them grew up in that environment where there was a lot of outside influence, a lot of outside push, but for whatever reason, those puzzle pieces never came together for them to have that desire for themselves. And for whatever reason, Tiger was the exact opposite, right? He turned around the desire his dad had for him and created his own. And so that's a very interesting thing. But even we'll go back to our level and people in business and small business owners and people that are highly successful. I think what you said is perfect. I think you kind of have to piece those pieces of the puzzle and those different characteristic traits together and polish the ones that need work. So,
Okay. So I give you guys a list of some words. All of these are really important to me. I'm not saying that I'm perfect at any of them. Obviously, I'm not. Steve's known me a long time. He can attest to that. They are, Steve, when you talked about Gene Stallings and having that place to come back to, obviously he's been exceptional at that. But I think that a lot of these words for me are when I find myself slipping, getting off track, or just not getting where I want to be the way that I need to be there. I go back and I try to reevaluate, and I see which one of these are missing the most. And which one I've ignored or neglected. So, but I want to find out from you guys, because it's always interesting to me. And we talked a little bit about the puzzle. That's my puzzle. That's what it looks like. If I get all of those pieces in the right spot, what the picture is going to look like when I'm done. But it's always interesting to find people that I talk to and what those words, what the most important is to them. And I always like to know what that word would be, what those three words would be, so that it helps me determine if I've got everything lined up in priority the way that it should be. So, Steve, I want to start with you. Give me your word. Give me the first out of three that's of those words that I gave that really is important to you and how you conduct yourself both personally and professionally.
So my first one, man. I mean, I would probably say core values, just because that probably incorporates the most out of all of these words for me. But honestly, I would probably start with mindset. And I really I'm not to hound this, but I like the puzzle analogy, and I use that analogy a lot. I actually used it last week, and I was talking to someone about business plan. But it all really comes down to your mindset. And I believe there's two different types of people. When we use the puzzle analogy, there's the types of people that are content with knowing what the puzzle would look like if I had the mindset and the drive to put it together. And there are the people that want to start at the corners and build the puzzle out so they can say they accomplished what this puzzle looks like. And so there's the ones there's the dreamers and there's the doers. And when you put that puzzle together, at least for me, starting with mindset, you've got to have the right mindset to know that I've got to start putting this together. And let's just say we're talking about a business. I got to start putting this business together with the aspects in my life that I know the most. Just like a puzzle, you start with the corner pieces because they have two edges. You can find four corner pieces. And so I know that I can start with these things because that's what I know best. So you start with corners and you build it out, and you go the edges because you know that the most. And then you start filling in by putting the colors and the shapes all together. If you try to start in the middle, you won't be successful. But if you start with the mindset, the right mindset of, hey, I got to start where my strengths are. And as I begin building this thing out, no matter what it is in life, I bring in other people to help me. I bring in experts, and we can start to build this thing out so we can make it the beautiful picture that it's supposed to be. those are the kind of people that I like to be around. Those are the kind of people that attract me to them. Like Chris is that kind of person, which is why day one when I met him, I knew that that'd be a good place for me, because he's that type of person. He knows what his strengths are. He knows what his weaknesses are. And he's going to build his business around, well, maybe he doesn't know what his weaknesses are, but we all,
yeah, I do.
I think most of us should. And I know Chris does. But you start with what you know best and you build it from there. And in order to do that, you have to have the right mindset. And that's part of that process that I was talking about. It's a process. If you're not driven to go through that process, then you're going to be someone who's content with knowing, hey, that's what it would look like if I took the time to do this. Great. Versus the people that will start and actually do it and finish it all the way through.
Great.
I don't even know if I answered your question, Lyndon, but
that was a great,
went off on the tangent.
Great point, great analogy. Chris, what about you? Give me a word.
Well, I don't know how much I can say that Stephen did already say, because I had the same thing for my first one was mindset. I think I looked at it from a little different angle, though. And I had a hard time choosing between a few of these, because depending on what angle you take with it, you could kind of apply the same action. And that's kind of the way I was looking at mindset. It was more from a, staying motivated, keeping your goals at the forefront, being able to get the daily tasks and the short-term tasks done while still looking at the big picture, and having that consistent motivation. So consistency was one of those words that I was kind of looking at too. But I think you can kind of encompass all that with mindset. And what Stephen said was exactly right. And again, I just kind of had a different viewpoint on it.
Sure. Would you guys agree that, because mindset is really something that I think for me, when I'm looking at it, self-awareness kind of comes first. You kind of do a self-reflection and an inventory of who you are, where you are, and why you're there. And then mindset for me would be second. And I'll tell you why, because I think that I read this once, that when most people go into business, they're looking at all the good things that are going to happen in that business and how it's going to work and what they're going to get out of it. And basically the results that they kind of like what Steve said, they see the picture of the puzzle, right? And they don't see the challenges that come along with putting that puzzle together. And I just believe that mindset can make the difference, because it sets you up and you set realistic expectations, knowing that not every day is going to be the best. Not every day are you going to have that lift that you want, it's going to be a personal best. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have challenges. There's going to be things that you didn't anticipate that are beyond your control. And it's going to make you question whether this is really what you want to do. At some point in time, I think we've all experienced that. And there can be a lot of things. Chris, you talked about just the challenges of having young kids and running a business at the same time. Some of those things, if you don't have the right mindset in the beginning, can take you by surprise. It's not that we can't overcome them. It's not that no one else has ever worked through them. But I think having a strong mindset is going to have you to the point where you have made up your mind that regardless of the obstacles, I will push through. And so mindset's really important to me. Steve, do you have another one?
Yeah, I do. I think it's hard to put these in order for me, especially top three. But we're big on core values. I know I talk about that a lot, Lendon. But I truly believe that core values are important, and I believe it's important to get them right. And I think it's different for every business. I think it's different for every family. I think families should have core values as well, just because that's going to, well, a lot of reasons. We won't get into that, but I do think core values are extremely important to have, and they are going to be different for everyone. For instance, ours is, like I said, make an impact: integrity, mentorship, professionalism, attitude, community, and teamwork. But those define who we are as a group, and I think it's important to not just create them, but to understand them and understand what it means to you and your business, or you and your family, or whatever it is that you're a part of, and holding true to those. And if you're able to hold true to those, then I think you have a very good opportunity to succeed, and not just achieve the goals that you set for yourself, but also go above and beyond what you ever thought was imaginable. So core values are huge for us.
I agree. Let me ask you a question. We talked about putting the puzzle together, and I was going to say this before, but I think now it's even a better time. In putting that piece of the puzzle together, when you start with the corners and you're putting the rest of it together, a lot of that sometimes a lot of those pieces of the puzzle are the people that we surround ourselves with. And I think that when we're looking out, whether we're hiring people, and Steve, we've had this conversation before, whether we're hiring people or partnering with people, core values is a great way to really identify up front how successful we're going to be, because there's a lot of attractive opportunity out there with partnering with people and with hiring certain people. But if they don't have the same core values, at some point along the way, that piece of the puzzle may not fit the way you thought it was going to fit. Would you agree?
Right. I agree wholeheartedly. And I think it's right, and I think it's fair up front to help individuals understand that, hey, you may not align with us here and where we're going, but you do align somewhere else with where they're going. And so provide them.
The other are right and the other person wrong.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and set them up for success, right? By being honest and holding true to what your values are. And also be fair to yourself in your own business, by not, you hate to use this word, but wasting time or wasting money when you knew up front this person is not someone who is like you or has the same goals as you do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
It's good to realize that up front.
I agree. All right, Chris, what about your number two?
Well, trying to go off the list here, I chose being timely, but I again, looking at it from a little bit of a different angle, I was thinking of it more along the lines of being decisive, and committing to your decisions. So you see a lot of people with great ideas and they're never decisive enough or timely enough or for whatever reason, they have something holding them back. They have something that's keeping them from pulling the trigger on that and trying to push forward. And even when somebody that's already in business and already has something going, they might run up against a hurdle or a fork in the road, and they struggle to decide one way or the other. And so you see them kind of trying to do both things or trying to do too many things as opposed to just sticking to one thing. And I think a lot of that goes back to core values and trying to stay on path with what matches with your original intent and where your big picture goals are. But I think that's one thing that's always kind of stood out for me. Looking back, there's at least 3 different things within our business that I made a fairly quick decision on, and just decided we were going to go and push forward with it. And those 3 things made all the difference in the world. I mean, there's a good chance business doesn't exist if those 3 things don't happen. And the first one was just simply getting started when we did. I mean, we kind of opened at the right time. Supply and demand was ripe, and I mean, we just hit it perfect at that from that aspect. But I could have easily sat back and waited another 6 months or a year, and then it wouldn't have worked. So
right, okay. Final one, Steve. What do you think?
Well, number one, I do like that, Chris. Being timely that was a good one. Real good one. In our business, I would probably say consistency, and I think that aligns well with fitness as well. What good is one day of prospecting when you have 5? What good is one day of working out when you have 5? Right.
Right.
It's being consistent, doing the things that you know that you need to do to be successful in whatever it is. And so it's kind of hard to single this one out and not throw in time management with that, because consistency in our business means you have to manage your time extremely well on a daily basis. So you have to be consistent with blocking off that 2.5 hours every single day to prospect and try to get new clients. You have to do it every single day. If you're not consistent with it, then the numbers don't work. You have to reach out to a certain number of people every day to get a certain response in order to bring on a certain number of clients. And if you don't do it, if the consistency is not there, you're not going to be successful. If you don't manage your time well enough to be consistent with it, you're not going to be successful. It's the cold hard truth, and it's the science of what we do.
Yes.
Consistency is everything. So.
Well, I'll give you, I've always felt that, Steve, when I was coaching back in when you were in high school and learning and watching other people, and you watch people like Tiger and I'll use this for an example. As I said before, not good in basketball or golf, but I love golf. And every once in a while, out of 100 shots, I'll hit a great shot. But that doesn't mean that I'm a great golfer. It just meant that I had a great shot. And I don't think that you can ever, as I said before at the beginning of the show, transform good into great until you find consistency. Because for me, being consistently good develops the greatness. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. But I think the pursuit of, I think I've said it on another show, but I think the pursuit of perfection is really what gets you there. Practicing perfect. I think, I don't know. I may have to retract that. I don't know if consistently good will get you there. I have to think about that a little bit, because to me that almost sounds like being content with being good, as opposed to, I know that I'm good, and I just use Olympic weightlifting as a scenario here. It's if I'm good with being good, then I'll come in, do the same thing every day. Think my technique is just good enough to be good. I'm just good enough to place in a certain few meets. However, if I'm not happy or not content with being good, I know that I've got to practice perfectly in order to be perfect. I'm going to video every lift. I'm going to analyze every lift, every angle, every back angle, everything that I possibly can to make sure that I'm practicing perfect. So when it comes time to perform, I can do it perfect. That's just off the cuff, but.
Yeah, and I think maybe I worded it wrong, but I agree with you. I didn't mean to imply that I would be satisfied with being good. I just think, as you're saying, you got to practice being perfect. You want to be able to be good on a consistent basis before you could ever be great, right?
Sure. Yeah, part of the process, yeah.
If I'm good every once in a while,
right,
that's being satisfied with being good. But until I'm good back to back to back to back, then that's where greatness can come from.
I agree. Yep.
Chris, last one, and then we're going to go to our final segment.
I just wanted to touch on what you guys are talking about in the pursuit of perfection. It's just such an interesting topic, because there are certain areas where, and it's pretty obvious when you get into the situation for most people, but there's certain areas where the pursuit of perfection is kind of the enemy of being good, right? So, and everybody kind of knows that analogy, but when talking about marketing, for example, if you're doing some type of organic marketing, if you're trying to make everything perfect, you're never going to press the post button. You're never going to press the send button on any of your marketing material, right? And so at some point you have to reach for, let's make it as good as we can, but in a timely fashion, right? And so I think some people do get bogged down in business trying to make things perfect, for lack of a better term, and as opposed to just being decisive, like we talked about, and hitting the go button. So but it's an interesting take. I totally agree with what you guys were saying as well, but there's definitely there's times when you just have to pick the bar up, Steve, right? When you're lifting, and then there's there's times, and there's times when you got to put the camera down too. And I get on my athletes all the time. They want to video everything and they want to post it on social media and they want me to analyze everything. I'm like, just put more weight on the bar and lift it. At some point, you just got to figure it out, and a lot of that comes to repetition, like we were talking about with marketing. Right. Yeah. So
I think
it's interesting the different ways you could get into that.
Yeah, and I think there's a true reality of knowing you're never going to be perfect. It's kind of like Bible class, right? We all want to be more like Jesus, but we're never going to be perfect. And so the effort in striving to be that, and knowing, if you will, I think there's a common denominator there. I want to be as perfect as possible, but know that hey, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to miss lists. I'm not going to close on some accounts. I'm going to say something I shouldn't have said, or I'm not going to know an answer to a question they asked. I agree totally with you on that. But anyways,
there's got to be balance there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables, but I think that kind of what we've always been talking about today, and we look at those people, we're looking to develop a perfect process. And that's really what I think. If you looked at Tiger Woods, in my opinion, is his training was really where he did his work, right? And then he applied that when he got out on the golf course in a tournament. But he was always working to develop the perfect process of training and development. And we can do that in athletics. We can do it in business. We can do it in anything like that. Chris, did you give me your final one, or were you just...
No, I kind of got off on that. But my last one, and Steve kind of talked about this with consistency, but sticking with my theme for the day here is I kind of have a different approach from it. I was really, in my mind, I was really thinking attention to detail when I was thinking about that, but in a consistent fashion, obviously, talking about consistency. And it's funny that I was just the one saying you kind of, sometimes you just have to go. But I think one of the things we've done really good is paying attention to detail and making sure that the little things that people may not notice on a regular basis, or they may not stand out to them as being part of our product or part of what we do. I think a lot of those small attention to details and things being just so layered on top of each other has really built our business the way it is. And again, I don't think very many people could even pick out those things if they were trying. But when I'm training somebody new, or when I'm teaching a coach how to run a class, or when I'm getting somebody to help me post something on our computer, on our website, I'm always very attentive to the details and the things that could inevitably have some type of impact on somebody or the product itself. And I think that's a consistent theme you see with people running a business. And even if they are in the mindset of, all right, we got to go, we got to get this out, that newspaper deadline mindset, you can't tell me those editors in the newsroom don't have a lot of attention to detail and making sure that product's going out the right way, but on time at the same time.
Absolutely. All right, so let's all good words: mindset, consistency. I love all of that. You guys have been great today. I want to kind of finish up the show today and give you guys a chance to recap, what you do, who you are. Let me just ask this: what's the ideal client for you guys? Completely different sides of the game here. Steve's in insurance, you're in fitness, but you each have an ideal client. Who can you serve and help the most? Who can you make the biggest difference in their life? Let's go with you first.
Who, me, Lendon?
Let's go with Chris first. We'll finish.
So somebody, I'll put it this way. We have a questionnaire that we send out to some people when they're signing up for either personal training or nutrition coaching. And a lot of it is to get information about their goals and kind of where they're at and where they want to go. But at the very end of it, we always ask them, do you have the ability to make lifestyle changes? Do you have the desire to make lifestyle changes? And there's the third or a fourth one in there. But the goal of those questions is the same, is to have them tell us that they're willing and ready to make some type of change. And that's really what we're looking for when people walk through the doors. We want people wanting to make a change and willing to make a change, because again, that's really what we're here for, is to provide opportunity for people to make the changes in themselves they want to make. And so, some guy wants us to come in and just get shredded. That's not that doesn't mean anything to me, right? Like, I need somebody that is really wanting to make some type of drastic change or even subtle change, but a serious change in their lifestyle to improve them, not only physically, but, outside the gym as well.
Awesome. I like that. Really good. Steve, what about you?
For us, it's going to be someone who, number one, wants to understand how to protect themselves from a liability standpoint, is interested in truly transferring their risk over to an insurance carrier and doing it the right way. And someone who has pain points, because, the thing that I think I spoke about a Post-it note on one of our shows, Lendon, about a Post-it note in one of our partners' office that says our job is to solve other people's problems. And it really is. Especially when it comes to our industry, there's most likely a pain point. And it can be in any facet. It can be health insurance related. It can be liability insurance related, auto insurance related, doesn't matter. There's always a pain point. Oftentimes it's cost. But even more so than that, when you dig into that, it can become ways to manage risk within your own facility, whether it's a fitness facility, whether it's a manufacturing facility. There's ways to transfer your risk and mitigate risk and save money at the same time by just investing a little bit in your own business. A lot of business owners don't understand that, and they don't understand the things that are out there that will enable them to do that. But an ideal client for us will be someone who really wants to make a difference in their own business, make sure that their business will be there to stay. It'll be there for the long haul, and it can weather things such as a COVID-19 pandemic.
Something unexpected like what we're going through now.
Nah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And there's ways to manage around that from a risk standpoint. So that would be an ideal client for us.
All right. So, Steve, tell us how folks can get in contact with you. Obviously, I'll have all the information will be posted. I'm running it as we go through this, but
sure.
Tell a little bit how to contact you, and then Chris.
Yeah. Easiest way is either a phone call or an email. My email is Stephen, Stephen, at PIA, as in Patterson Insurance Agency, PIA Insure, INSURE.com, or my direct line at work, which comes straight to my cell phone now that we're in shelter-in-place mode here. But it's 214-253-2578. You can obviously visit our website, piainsure.com. But I'm always on email. That's usually the quickest way to reach me. But if you decide to call, that's perfectly fine too. Just leave me a message. If I'm not able to answer, I'll give you a call back. Okay.
All right. Chris, what about you? How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is just our website. It's easy. It's CrossFitWiley.com. And then we typically do free trials in person, but right now we're doing free goal setting sessions and free intros via Zoom or video chat. And Chris at CrossFitWiley.com is the easiest way to get a hold of us and try to set one of those up. And then my wife runs her physical therapy clinic, and it's gracephysicaltherapy.com. So that's an easy one to remember as well. So we both do remote work and on-call work and do all those things. So we're kind of a team from that regard. We try to, I break them down and she fixes them. So.
All right. Last question for you both, unless you've got anything you want to add. But if you had one piece of advice to give to someone that was just starting out in business, or maybe someone that's kind of been going through some challenges and trying to reach some professional goals, what would it be? Just one piece of advice. Steve, let's start with you.
For someone who's trying to start a business, one piece of advice. Well,
make sure you're well insured.
Yeah, well, there is that, because you will make mistakes. I will be honest with you. You will make mistakes. So that probably would be, as far as starting, that probably would not obviously be my first piece of advice, but I would just say you're not going to be prepared, especially if this is your first business. You're not going to be prepared. Go into it knowing that it's going to be more than you thought it would be. Be ready to work hard. Be ready for surprises, and certainly be ready and willing to adapt. Because just know that the plan that you have may change 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times by the time everything is all said and done. But if it's something that you want, make sure it's something that you believe in. You're going to have a much more opportunity for success if you believe in what you're doing. But just be prepared to work, because you're gonna work hard, and that's part of it. It's part of the process, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
Chris, what about you? One piece of advice.
Just go.
Go.
Just go. obviously are two different, Steven's in the insurance industry. And so it's interesting to see kind of his thought process and where that he goes with that, where I'm in the fitness industry. I'm like, just go do it. So we have kind of a motto that says, that's at the gym and it's do the hard things. And it's very, really simple. And then basically the way I look at that is very rarely in life, even just in your regular day to day, is doing the easy thing what's going to set you up for success. Doing the easy thing, like eating that microwave pizza versus making a salad, is not going to set you up for success. Going to bed early and setting that alarm clock for early is not the easy way to go, and it's not the fun way to go. But staying up late and sleeping in is not going to set you up for success. Going, like Steven said, going when you know you're not quite ready, pulling the trigger on something when you know you don't have all the answers, when you know you're going to run into some hurdles, that's not easy. Starting a business and taking that risk is not easy. Doing the hard things, whether they're the little habitual things that set you up to reach your goals, or the big decisions that are scary, it's never easy. Doing anything successful is never going to be easy, and very rarely is the easy thing the right thing. So just go and do the hard things.
Absolutely. That's what makes a difference. Well, I want to thank you guys for being a part of the show. Steve, thank you for inviting Chris. Chris, it was great to meet you. I want to remind our listeners that you can not only see our shows on Facebook and YouTube, but you can now download and listen on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart Radio, Google Podcast, and Anchor. I want to thank everyone for your comments, your views, and your support. And in closing, I just want to leave you with this thought. The difference can most often be found in the habits and behaviors that lead to the choices we make, the paths that we take, and the discipline needed to stay the course. And until the person we are today becomes the person we really want to be. And that in turn leads us from where we are today to the place we've always wanted to be. So until next time, don't give up, don't give out, and don't give in, because more often than not, the difference is you.